Hi and welcome back to SDI Coffee Break. And again, we're with Pat Bolger from Hornbill. Welcome, Pat.
Thanks, David.
Nice to see you again. We were talking about that last time, but great to see you again. And I think what's really good about this series of vlogs is the content, which I think is really cool, actually. There's a new publication that you'll be bringing out very soon, which is focused on the path out of COVID-19, which is really, really important. So we've already talked about the preamble in the previous video. So in this one, I think we look at stage one. It's split into 5 stages. We look at stage one. And stage one covers COVID-19, the actual thing, the hit of COVID-19, what happened. So things like triage, remote working, and firefighting. Now, it's still relatively soon, isn't it? You know, it's not too long ago. We're almost talking about this thing that happened years ago. Well, actually, it's not too long ago, really, is it? It's really about 4 months, 5 months ago, and depending on the organization and whatever happens there at different paces as well, and having to deal with all that stuff. So it's early days, but I think it's really good to have a chance to reflect, Pat, on maybe the last 4 months a little bit, right? So I suppose my first question is, you know, as a sort of brain in this industry, a thought leader in the industry, what did you see? What did you see during that period, Pat? What did you learn from it?
I learned that digital transformation that everyone's been talking about basically happened in March. That was the first thing. Okay, there's a lot more work to be done. But what we saw was the things that should have taken years basically happened in months. And things that would have taken months happened in weeks, if not days. During this period of time. And what I also saw is that all of that IT, the business continuity planning that IT had done, largely hadn't been tested. So even though people had laptops and stuff, they hadn't actually taken them home and tried to use them. So, but we had that situation where things like bring your own device, which normally the industry pushes back against, that had to be embraced. Security, which we never relaxed, had to be relaxed. You had video conferencing tools just sitting on the shelf. One of my customers said that usage of Microsoft Teams went up by 8,000% in the month of March. Wow. Crazy, absolutely crazy. But of course, what actually happened, repurposing of old equipment, recycling it and getting it ready for people who didn't have a laptop, for example's sake. VPN, huge number of licenses purchased. And there was also, as kind of people started to use these things at home, of course, it was like, it's not working. So they were contacting the service desk. So there was a massive spike in incident volumes. But it was a telling time in terms of what IT did and how it managed during that period of time. And I think largely, I'd say as an industry, we coped incredibly well through that period. Huge number of posts on social media saying, wow, our guys did wonderful. But I think we can't sit back and kind of rest on our laurels and say, well done us, because now we have a huge amount of work to do as we return to plan for this return to work and plan for a new digital strategy to get ourselves out of this.
Yeah, I think I agree. And similarly, you know, we saw, I tracked, I think early days when it kicked off, you know, as an institute, there is so much that we can do and so much we can sort of relay, you know, and I did a lot of reading similarly and posted some success stories as well, some incredible stories, Pat. So it's the same things, the challenges, the successes, the speed of all that, how it happened. You know, what interests me, that you've told one of them out actually, 2 things, right? When we go in and work with organizations, a focus is, as you'd rightly expect, is business continuity and disaster recovery. And it's surprising how many organizations have done we do a paper DI every year, 2 years. Yeah, but have you actually done it? Have you? Well, we are not yet, but we will be. You know, or where's your relocation site? Well, it's around the back in the shed. You know what I mean? That type of thing, right? So
they'll be doing it now. They'll be doing it now.
Yeah. So that's interesting because you're right. I think there was a definitely lack of preparation. I mean, nobody's going to have 1,000 laptops ready for this. Right? They're not, right? But certainly from a risk mitigation and planning, what do we do if? I think that's some of the smarter organizations, I think, where they hang out, you know. And another one was the barriers. I think, you know, we used to talk to organizations about, well, why can't you have more of a flexible working from home thing at the service desk? You've got the technology, why can't you? And there's always a reason why. And yes, you're right, You said it, security, data, all that. It's amazing how quickly those barriers just disappeared overnight. I think that was amazing. And I sort of felt empowered by that, because it was like, yes, you can. You can. Just the necessity of having to was the thing that you needed to embrace, So
that's the thing. If you have any historically significant event, it's a huge catalyst for change.
Yes.
Huge catalyst for change. And because the change can't be pushed back against. So that's what happened here. That change happened because it had to.
Yeah, and I like that. There's almost an embryonic thing about it for me, you see. It's almost an embryonic thing about the next phase in what we are. And what we are as an industry, as people in the service industry. And we also talked as well about, getting hold of laptops, the challenges there, the different questions from the universe, different questions, different needs, different workloads, all that, which is great. And I hope at some point, once we've really come out of this and reflected, I'm hoping that these lessons learned will be galvanized, pulled together in something comprehensive where people can read and listen and learn again, relearn again, And that comes on to my next question, I think, Pat, right? If there was a magic restore button, if we had a magic restore 2018 button, right? Because we do a lot of restoring to me IT, right? So if we had a magic restore 2018 button that took an organization back to 2018 so they could think again about how to prepare right now, right? How many organizations that you've seen you think would have taken it? Percentage, right? How many you think you would have taken it? First question. Second question, what do you think they would have done differently? With what they've seen, what we know now in 2020, what would they have done differently? In fact, what would you have told them to do differently through that period as well?
Well, the big challenge, this industry has been kind of sleepwalking, if you ask me. If you look at it on average, the average kind of percentage of revenue for any business that's dedicated to IT is about 3-point-something%. That's scandalous. That is a recipe for extinction. That's what that is. And that's because IT is still viewed as a cost, a necessary cost that needs to be. Now, that's not always the case, because in some organizations it's different. And typically within those organizations that have a better kind of digital strategy, but not only that, they're talking to other parts of their organization and actually helping them out rather than kind of redecorating their own rooms. So I would say probably the first thing I'd say to businesses, to IT organizations, is get out and solve problems outside of IT. Get out and solve problems for other business units. That's the first thing I would have done. Because once you've actually established that value and made it really, really visible within your organization, investment comes. It's that simple. And if you can establish that value, then you're looking at kind of using technology to solve other problems rather than just IT problems. And let's face it, at the end of the day, that's what we should be doing anyway. So that's the first thing I would have done. The second thing I would have done is suggest that you review your technology. The old ways, IT service management, the whole market was reshaped by SaaS. But that was first generation stuff. We're still looking at those kind of massive projects, complex stuff, and it's just an old way of doing things. You don't have to do that anymore. Tools should work like Facebook. An update's available. Do you want it? Yes. Do you want to turn on permanent updates? Right, fine. Don't worry about it again. That's how the tool should work, and it should be a point-and-click exercise. So I would say modernizing your service management is the other thing that absolutely needed to be done. And were we in a position in 2018 where every organization had done that, we'd have sailed through this period with not too much of an impact on the majority of businesses where you've got information workers that need support. Because if they don't have support, if you have a business and your employees aren't supported, at what point does it actually cease to be a business?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. And the first part of that was, so what you've seen, right? Out of what you've seen, how many organizations do you think would have hit that button, that reset button? Percentage?
That's a really difficult question. I would say the percentage would have been pretty low. With hindsight, it would have been most of them, but I say the percentage would have been pretty low, because I do think we have this kind of culture that's developed over years. We have existing ways of doing things, risk adverse, and all of that joined up and siloed ways of working. And what we're talking about here is an absolute massive change in people's behavior and the way people work. That's not an easy thing to implement. Even when we did it ourselves and moved to being a far more collaborative environment, it took a good 9 to 12 months of us kind of pushing our staff to say, post stuff on the workspace, don't use email. So you're talking about changing people's behavior. But of course, what we have now is a crisis that had to change people's behavior. So this perhaps is probably the biggest opportunity for IT and for businesses to reinvent themselves that has been seen in our history or a living history, probably.
I agree. And again, and I'm quite I tend to be quite theatrical, right? But you could liken it to the impact of something like the Blitz, right? Yeah, or something like the Great Fire of London. It's reinventing, and actually the outcome longer term is going to be a better place. I think if we get it right, I think, right. Good. All right. Well, we're gonna leave this one there. Thanks again for that, Pat. That's really some really great stuff to sort of chew over. Really good. And there's more to come in the next few sessions too. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for our listeners for listening as well. And join us in the next coffee break in the series. Thank you.